හරිම සුමුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Thursday, the 8th of February 2024. Parliament heats up. SLPP explains reasons why they support the incumbent president. SJB, however, reaffirms their stance on not joining hands with the president. Need of the hour. Central Bank Governor highlights the need to collect more revenue to avoid another crisis. Clean energy. Expect positive outcomes on talks pertaining to Adani-funded wind power plant projects in March, says Power and Energy Minister. Relaxed. CBSL eases restriction imposed on standing lending facilities of licensed commercial banks.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is AdaDerana First at 9 with Ndivari Amuata and Mahish Johnny. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Well, a very warm welcome to you once again. We're back with your top stories from across Sri Lanka and around the world. I'm Indivari Amuatha.
Good evening, Indivari. Good to be, bringing a lot of the stories from around our country. If we talk about our nation's parliament, it was in chaos today because apparently everybody wanted to explain their position with regard to why they're supporting or not supporting the president.
I think the question of the presidential election and who will stand as the candidate will remain to be questioned continuously.
We saw the same thing yesterday as well when the opposition walked out when the president was basically presenting his throne speech for the I think it was the 5th session of the 9th Parliament.
We have seen more turbulent times. I think we can
True indeed.
we can wait for this one. We'll take you straight to your top story tonight.
Well, Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe stresses that government revenue collection has to be stable in order to avoid another economic crisis in the country.
Delivering the keynote address of the annual general meeting of the National Chamber of Commerce, the Central Bank Governor said the banking system in Sri Lanka should have sufficient buffers that will be useful in providing more credit to the private sector, which will help achieve economic growth.
Now, the CBSL chief highlighted the need for an economic transformation and called on businesses in the country to be competitive not only in the local market but also in the international market.
The keynote address of the 65th Annual General Meeting of the National Chamber of Commerce, which was held in Colombo, was delivered by Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe.
The instruments for us to maintain stability are tax rates or exchange rate or interest rates. Those things will have to be changed. What needs to be stable is government ability to collect revenue in terms of GDP. If that's going to come down to 8%, 9, 10%, that is unpredictability. That could cause another sovereign debt crisis. That's why I think what should be predictable is government ability to collect sufficient revenues so that government can spend for necessary health, education and social safety net and do all the facilities for the public without increasing debt levels. That is a predictability what we expect from the government side, for the fiscal policy. From the other side, monetary policy, we want stable inflation, want sufficient buffers. And even from the banking sector, what we would like to see banks have a sufficient capital buffers so that they can support who will do business and give more credit and stable banking system and protect the deposits of the banks so that we have predictable, sustainable banking sector. Those are the predictability. So this is overall macro policy sense that we are trying to achieve, and we want to maintain that even going forward. Adjustment is short and very painful. The benefits will come with a time lag. It might take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, depending on the business conditions. This again another point is that if we think that we can go back to the same kind of business practices that we had before the crisis. I think that's where I appreciate some of the measures that you're talking about. So we're now trying to change that path. But for us not to get back to that thing, and we need to get the economy transformed into a new economy. We can't go back to the same economy, and that's not going to work. Then we might have a risk of going back. This is where the businesses and you all will have to think differently. Going forward, have more dynamic situations, and obviously, broadly, we need to have businesses which are much more competitive, which can compete not only in the local market, local businesses. We should be able to compete globally with much more open, integrated economy. You all need to be much more competitive. Should be able for you to success. Should be able to compete globally so that you can either produce or make goods and services not only for local market but also global market on a competitive basis.
The Central Bank of Sri Lanka has decided to relax restrictions imposed on the standing facilities of licensed commercial banks. Accordingly, from the 16th of this month, the restriction imposed on the standing lending facility is expected to be removed, while the standing deposit facility restriction is expected to be relaxed from 5 times to 10 times during a calendar month. The relaxation of restrictions on standing facilities is expected to accelerate the downward adjustment in market interest rates as envisaged under the overall monetary policy direction of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka.
The central bank introduced restrictions on the usage of the standing facilities by the licensed commercial banks under open market operations with effect from 16th of January 2023. Access to the standing deposit facility was limited to a maximum of 5 times per calendar month, while access to the standing lending facility was limited to 90% of the statutory reserve requirement of each licensed commercial bank on any given day. Those measures were imposed to reduce the overdependence of licensed commercial banks on the overnight facilities offered by the central bank, supporting the reactivation of the domestic money market, particularly the call money market, and inducing licensed commercial banks to introduce internal corrective measures. Releasing a statement in this regard, the central bank stated that it observed those measures to have yielded positive outcomes by way of reactivating the domestic money market and curtailing excessive competition for deposit mobilization among financial institutions. The CBSL added that these measures were also instrumental in inducing a moderation in the market interest rate structure in line with the monetary policy stance while preserving the stability of financial institutions and the financial system. Further, the CBSL noted that after carefully reviewing the developments in the domestic money market as well as the behavior of the licensed commercial banks in terms of market participation and improvements in liquidity, the Monetary Policy Board at its meeting yesterday decided to relax the said restrictions starting next week. Accordingly, with effect from the reserve maintenance period commencing on the 16th of February this year, the restriction on the standing lending facility will be removed and the restriction on the standing deposit facility will be relaxed from 5 times to 10 times during a calendar month. The relaxation of the restrictions on standing facilities is expected to accelerate the downward adjustments in market interest rates as envisaged under the overall monetary policy direction of the central bank.
Now, former ambassador to the World Trade Organization, Dr. Derana Silva says that under the free trade agreement signed between Thailand and Sri Lanka, no tariff concessions have been given to Sri Lanka's apparel products and some coconut products.
Joining me earlier on our current affairs program at Hyde Park, Dr. Silva said that Sri Lanka has tapped into a bigger market as Thailand's economy is more integrated with the international economy. Also sharing insights on the deterioration of Sri Lankan exports, Dr. Silva said that in stark contrast to most globally well-integrated economies, Sri Lanka is actually following more inward-looking trade policies which prevent the country from creating businesses that can compete internationally.
Now, he further added that Sri Lanka gradually recovering economy must bring in more export-oriented tariff regimes to optimize the benefits of their signed trade agreements.
You mentioned that Sri Lanka should look at improving the supply side domestically in order to take maximum use of the free trade agreement. But at the same time, when we talk about the Thai FTA, how do we really look at developing the export side?
Theoretically, the benefits of free trade agreement depend on the product coverage and the depth of tariff cuts and very importantly the rules of origin. Now, Sri Lanka's trade with Thailand is about 55 $65 million as at last year, and whereas Sri Lanka imports about $300 million. But you have to understand one opportunity. Thailand is a country in terms of the size, is a country with 70 million people. Their GDP is about 500 million and ours is 80 million. Now, how we categorize Thailand and Sri Lanka in terms of their trade openness. Thailand is more integrated to the global economy. Now this is measured what you call the trade to GDP ratio. Thailand trade to GDP is, as according to last year figures, 134%, whereas Sri Lanka's trade as a percentage of GDP is about 46%. 30 years ago, our trade to GDP was 89% and it was reduced to 46%. The main reason is there is what you call the policy reversal. We move towards more inward looking policies rather than outward looking. So we did not create companies or create an environment, create firms which can sell globally. The Thailand policy environment is different. Their tariff regime and other import regime are more export oriented type of policies. Therefore, the firms that they produce are able to compete and trade globally. Sri Lanka is on the other way side. Now, if you look at our tariff regime, I must emphasize that. I must repeat that. I have said this. We have the most complex tariff regime in this region compared to others. So this is our own problem. Not only the complex, the tariff structure is giving more incentive to produce locally rather than produce locally and sell globally. That's the policy mistake we had. So we have to correct that one. If we are to increase our trade, then we have to put those policy regime, tariff regime, more export-oriented tariff structure.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe is scheduled to deliver the keynote address at the 7th edition of the Indian Ocean Conference, which is set to commence in Perth, Australia tomorrow.
The 7th edition of the Indian Ocean Conference, under the theme Towards a Stable and Sustainable Indian Ocean, is scheduled to be held in Perth, Australia from the 9th to the 10th of February. The conference is organised by the India Foundation in association with the Ministry of External Affairs of India, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Australia, S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies Singapore and the Perth US Asia Centre. To take part in the annual conference on an invitation from the India Foundation and the Government of Australia, President Ranil Wickremesinghe left for Australia this morning. The President's office reported that President Wickremesinghe is later to deliver the keynote address during the conference. Accompanying the President is Minister of Foreign Affairs Ali Sabri, who is scheduled to address the plenary session titled Our Blue Future, How Can the Indian Ocean Region Work with Island States to Safeguard the Health of Our Shared Ocean Resources? The annual conference, of which the second edition was hosted in Sri Lanka in 2017, aims to bring critical states and principal maritime partners of the Indian Ocean region together on a common platform to deliberate upon the prospects of regional cooperation for security and growth for all in the region.
Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara is hopeful of positive outcomes from the negotiations on the construction of 2 wind power plants under India's Adani Green Energy Limited within the next month. Speaking to Reuters during his visit to India, the minister also said discussions are underway on the mechanics of shipping liquefied natural gas to Sri Lanka from India, a development that came following India's Petronet LNG's proposal to supply LNG to Sri Lanka for the power generation of Yugadanavi and Sobavi power plants. The minister, who also commented on Sinopec's proposal to construct an oil refinery in Hambantota, said Sri Lanka has made clarifications regarding several concerns raised by Sinopec on land clearance, water availability, taxes and concessions.
During an interview with Reuters on the sidelines of the India Energy Week event in Goa, Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara expressed hope of making progress on 2 delayed wind energy projects to be built by India's Adani Green Energy Limited in Mannar and Punarine by next month. While highlighting that Sri Lanka will be able to see some results from the negotiation process, the minister stated that there is another negotiation for the transmission lines that is also being evaluated. The minister said both negotiations are happening simultaneously and expressed hope of positive outcomes by March. 6 months after securing the West Container Terminal Development Project at the Colombo Port in September 2021, the Adani Group signed a deal for 2 large power projects in the Jaffna and Punarin areas of Sri Lanka's northern province. The power plants, which are expected to generate a total of 500 megawatts, will be constructed with an investment of $500 million. Meanwhile, on the 1st of February, Power and Energy Minister Kanchana Wijesekara revealed that India's top gas importer Petronet LNG has proposed to supply liquefied natural gas to Sri Lanka to help the island nation's power generation from its Yugadanavi and Sobadanavi power plants. Speaking to Reuters in this regard, Wijesekara stated that Sri Lankan officials and officials of India's state-run Petronet LNG are currently working out the mechanics of shipping LNG. While highlighting that its negotiations are progressing positively, the minister said there will be some positive outcomes within the next 3 to 4 weeks. Meanwhile, commenting on the proposed $4.5 billion oil refinery to be built by China's Sinopec in Hambantota, Wijesekara said the contract has been awarded and the government has made clarifications sought after by Sinopec on land clearance, water availability, taxes and concessions.
Ceylon Electricity Board has signed a power purchase agreement for the 100 megawatt ground mount solar project in Rusiamalandu with the Ridanavi Private Limited today. Taking to X, formerly Twitter, the Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijesekara, said that the project was advertised by the Ceylon Electricity Board in September of 2022 and evaluated in 2023. After the evaluation, it was awarded to the lowest successful bidder, Rividanavi, at the end of 2023. Rividanavi will also build the transmission line of 27.5 kilometers project that will be transferred to the Ceylon Electricity Board. Rividanavi is a consortium of shareholders which includes Lakdanavi, Winforce PLC and the Blue Circle of Singapore. According to the minister, the total project demands an estimated investment of $132 million. The project comes as another step of the Sri Lankan government's renewable energy plan, which aims to achieve 70% renewable energy generation by 2030 and become carbon neutral by 2050. Sri Lanka is also implementing nationally detrimental contributions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and aims to develop an additional capacity of 3,867 megawatt of renewable energy by 2030.
Acting Inspector General of Police Deshabandhu Tennakoon assured that steps will be taken to arrest police officers with ties to organised crime. Addressing media in Colombo, the acting IGP said information on police officers involved in organised crime has been received and that authorities are in the process of gathering more evidence.
සංවිධානාත්මක අපරාධකාරී විසින් මෑත කාලීනව කරපු සියලුම ප්‍රධාන සිදුවීම් සියල්ලගේම අපරාධකරුවන් නීතියරහයන්ට හසු කර ගන්න පොලිසිය නිලධාරීන් සමත් වෙනවා. මේ සියලුම සිදුවීම් වල සැකකරුවන්ව අත්අඩංගුවට ගැනීම පුළුවන් වීම තුල මේ සංවිධානාත්මක අපරාධකාරී වල ක්‍රියාකාරීත්වය කෙරෙහි බෙහෙවීම බලපාලා දෙනවා. මුල් කාලේ සඳහන් කරා පොලිසිය ඇතුළු යම් කාරණාවල් එළියට යනවා නැත්නම් පොලිසිය යම් සහායවල තිබුණා කියලා. දැන් ඒවට අරන් තියෙන පියවර මොනවද? අපරාධ පරීක්ෂණ දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවේ රඳවු නියෝග මත රඳවලා තියෙන අඳුන් චින්තක වික්‍රමරත්න හොත් හරක්කටා කියන පුද්ගලයාට අනුබල දීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් පොලිස් කොස්තාපල්වරයෙක්ව දින කිහිපයකට කලින් අත්අඩංගුවට ගත්තා. ඔහු විශේෂයෙන් රඳවගෙන ප්‍රශ්න කිරීම කරනවා. මට අපරාධ පරීක්ෂණ දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවේ උසස් නිලධාරීන් වාර්තා කරලා තියෙනවා. නිලධාරියාගේ මාර්ගයෙන් තවත් ඔවුන්ට සහාය වෙච්ච නිලධාරීන් කිහිප දෙනෙක් සම්බන්ධයෙන් තොරතුරු අනාවරණය වෙලා තිනවා. ඒ අනුව ඒ අය සම්බන්ධයෙන් පමණක් නොව බාහිරව තියෙන පොලිස් ස්ථානවල වුණත් අපරාධකරුවන් සමග සම්බන්ධතා පවත්වන බවට තොරතුරු ලැබිලා තියෙනවා. යම් නිලධාරීන් පිරිසක් සම්බන්ධව අපි විමර්ශන කටයුතු කරගෙන ඉන්නවා. ඒ අය සම්බන්ධව ප්‍රමාණවත් සාක්ෂි සහිතව ඉදිරියට වීම සමගම අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම කිසිම පැකිලීමකින් තොරව අපි ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ගන්නවා.
Let's get you the latest from our nation's parliament now. In parliament today, parliamentarian of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna Madura Vithanage says that President Ranil Wickremesinghe had the backbone to act in his own way without being influenced by agendas of other countries.
And State Minister of Finance Ranjit Siyamalapitiya criticised some of the members of the opposition as irresponsible as they left the chamber yesterday while the President was delivering his policy statement.
Now, in response to parliamentarian of Samagi Janabalawege, Nalin Bandara says that they are not ready to support the president or join those who made the country bankrupt.
අවුරුදු දෙක තුළ ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ පෞරුෂය තුලින් අපි දැක්ක එක තමයි ඒ රටවල් වල තානාපතිලාට ඕන විදියට රටවල් වල න්‍යායපත්‍ර වලට ඕන විදියට ජනාධිපතිතුමා හැසිරුනේ නැහැ. ඉතින් මම හිතන්නේ මේ වසර දෙකක ප්‍රගතිය තුල ඒක අපිට පැහැදිලිව පේන.
අපේ ගරු ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ රාජාසන කතාවලට අවුරුදු 3ක් සම්බන්ධ වුණා. විවාද කෙරුවා. නමුත් ඊ අපි නැගිටලා ගියා. අත්ත වශයෙන්ම අපේ සහයෝගය අවශ්‍ය නම් විපක්ෂයේ മന്ത്രിවරුන්ට විපක්ෂයට ගෞරවාන්විත සැලකීමක් තියෙන්න ඕන. අපි එදා සාමකාමී විරෝධතාවයක් තිබ්බා. ඒකට පාර දුන්නා. ඉතින් අපිට පාර දීලා මෙතෙන්ට ඇවිල්ලා අපේ සහයෝගී ඉල්ලන්න ලැජ්ජ නැද්ද? අපි සහයෝගය දුන්නොත් අපිට ගම්වලට යන්න බැරි වෙයි. දැන් රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මැතිතුමා අපිත් එක්ක ඉන්නකොට මේ වගේ වැඩ කෙරුවේ නෑ.
දැන් ඊයේ එතුමාලා නැගිටලා ගියා. ඒකද වගකීම් විපක්ෂයක වගකීම කියලා මම දන්නේ නෑ ගරු නියෝජ්‍ය කතානායකතුමනි. හැබැයි ඒක එක දෙයක් වුණා. එතුමාලා තුළ තියෙන බෙදීමත් රටට ප්‍රදර්ශනය කරා. එතුමාලා නැගිටලා යනකොට භාගයක් මෙතන ඉඳගෙන හිටියා.
අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා රටේ ජනතාව බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා විකල්ප මාවත කුමක්ද කියන එක. මම කැමති මේ අවස්ථාවේ විශේෂයෙන්ම විකල්ප මාවත රට ක්‍රියාත්මක විය යුතු තුන්වෙනි මාවත පිළිබඳව ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් කරුණු 20ක් එලි දක්වන්න. ආරම්භයේදීම කියන්නට ඕන අපි ගමන් කරන මැද මාවත තුන්වෙනි මාවත අන්ත දක්ෂිණාංශක නව ලිබරල් වාදයක් නොව අන්ත වාමාංශික සමාජවාදයක් නොව සමබර මැද මාවතයි. මේ සඳහන් කරන ප්‍රතිපත්ති 20 තුල අපේ රටට මේට වඩා සෞභාග්‍යයක් නවෝදයක් උදා කිරීමේ අවස්ථාව නිර්මාණය වෙනවා.
විසිවැදෑරුම් කාරණා ගැන කිව්වා. අපි මේක කරනවා කරන ක්‍රමේ තුමා කිව්වේ නෑනේ. කොහෙන්ද සල්ලි හොයාගන්නේ? කොහොමද ආයෝජන ආකර්ෂණය කරගන්නේ? ඇවිල්ලා කියනවා මවලා පෙන්නනවා මෙන්න එළඩින්ගේ පුදුම පහන ගෙනාවා. ඔක්කොටම මේවා දුන්නා. මේ විදිහේ බොහෝම රසවත් කතා කියන ඉන්ද්‍රජාලකින්ට මේ රටේ ජනතාව රැවටෙන්නේ නෑ කියන එක මං කියන්නට ඕන.
රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මැතිතුමාත් ඊයේ කිව්වා පොහොට්ටු අයට එතුමාට උදව් කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඇයි සමගි ජන බලවේගයට උදව් කරන්න බැරි කියලා. හොඳ ප්‍රශ්නයක්. ඕක තමයි අපිට බැරි. මෙච්චර කාලයක් රට බංකොලොත් කරපු රට හොරකම් කරපු රට බුම්මත් කරපු අයත් එක්ක අපිට කටයුතු කරන්න බෑ. ඒ නිසා අපිට බෑ. ජාත්‍යන්තර සහාය අරගෙන ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය අරමුදලට ගිහිල්ලා හරි මේ අර්බුදයේ විසඳන්න එතුමාට හැකියාව ලැබුණා. අනේ නිසා තමයි අපි රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්මයාට කොන්දේසි විතරවත් සහාය දෙන්නේ.
Well, the Colombo High Court sentenced to life an individual involved in drug trafficking and the possession of heroin.
In a separate incident, 2 suspects who had in their possession a cache of controlled narcotic substances in the form of 1,200 capsules were also arrested.
In the meantime, a total of 728 suspects have been arrested during the special operation Yukthia conducted by the Sri Lanka Police and its special task force during the last 24 hours.
The Sri Lankan Police and the Police Special Task Force apprehended a total of 728 suspects during raids across the country within the last 24-hour period. The arrests were made as a part of the Special Operation Yukthia, which aims to curb the trafficking of drug and addressing outstanding warrants. 558 suspects have been apprehended for drug-related offences, which 14 of them were identified as high-priority targets, appearing on the lists of both the Police Narcotics Bureau and the Police Special Bureau. Meanwhile, an individual who was convicted for drug trafficking and the possession of about 6 grams of heroin was sentenced to life imprisonment by the Colombo High Court today. The order was issued by High Court Judge Aditya Patabandige. The convict Sudat Prasanna had been arrested by police during a raid in the Kettarama area of Grand Pass in year 2018 with approximately 5.9 grams of heroin in his possession. In the meantime, 2 suspects aged 23 and 45 were apprehended in Nanathan Silvathurai while in possession of a cache of controlled drugs intended for sale. The arrests were made during a search operation carried out by Sri Lanka Navy and the Divisional Crimes Investigation Unit in Mannar yesterday. As such, a total of 1,200 pregabalin capsules were seized during the operation, and the suspects in question were handed over to the Silvathurai police for further legal investigation. In other news, a 29-year-old suspect was arrested yesterday for his alleged involvement in the murder of a Buddhist monk at a temple in Malwathu Hiripite area last month. During a late-night operation carried out by the Western North Crimes Division, a T-56 firearm used during the shooting last month was also recovered from the suspect's possession. On the 23rd of January, a group of 4 assailants shot dead a Buddhist monk inside a temple in the Malwathu Hiripite area of Gampaha.
Welcome back to the news. Strong bullish sentiment extended to yet another day as the secondary market adjusted downwards for a fifth consecutive session, with investors sent interest spanning across mid-tenors. Accordingly, 2025 maturity observed trade at 11%, with 2027 and 2028 maturities attracted trades at 11.75% and 12% respectively. Analysts say buying sentiment continued to persist despite central bank's announcement on relaxation of restrictions on the standing facilities to licensed commercial banks. Meanwhile, the central bank has announced the issue of 55 billion rupees worth bond auction scheduled on the 13th of this month.
Well, the bourse gained a seventh consecutive session today as intense investor participation was witnessed. Benchmark ASPI peaked at the start of the session and maintained the gain position throughout the end, trading at 10,547. Increased buying interest was observed on banking and blue chip counters, with Haley's, DFCC and HEMA's being a few of the largest contributors. Turnover was recorded at 1.1 billion, which is 19% lower than the average monthly turnover of 1.3 billion. However, a relatively large retail presence was observed today as more investors were participating in the market following yesterday's two-year high turnover of 12.2 billion. Foreign investors remained net sellers with a net foreign outflow of 120 million during the day's session.
The Sri Lankan rupee today appreciated against the US dollar to close at 313.2. Here's a look at how the rupee exchanged rates today.
Well, Sri Lanka's Engage and India's Astrum have entered a strategic alliance to offer communication solutions for clients in both countries. Meanwhile, the Oxford College of Business was awarded the Sri Lanka's National Quality Award for 2022. With that, let's have a look at some developments in the Sri Lanka's corporate sector.
Astrum, India's first research-based strategic communication advisory that uses science of persuasion to understand and shape public opinion, together with Sri Lanka's Engage, an integrated marketing communications and public relations solution provider, entered a strategic alliance to bridge India and Sri Lanka connectivity. The partnership capitalizes on the growing economic strength of the South Asian subcontinent and will see both Astrum and Engage collaborate to offer clients in India and Sri Lanka research-based multidisciplinary strategic communication solutions. Oxford College of Business was awarded the Sri Lanka National Quality Award 2022 under the Education Small category. Oxford College of Business said in a statement that the Sri Lanka National Quality Award is a testament to the Institute's commitment to excellence in education and organizational quality. The award criteria evaluated various aspects, including leadership, strategic planning, customer focus, measurement and analysis, workforce focus, process management, and results. Jet Holdings plc recently celebrated the conclusion of its third convocation under the Jet Pintaru Abhiman program. The ceremony saw the 132 individuals of the third batch of the skilled painters and carpenters receiving their internationally recognized national vocational qualifications from the National Apprentice and Industrial Training Authority. Jet Pintaru Abhiman, launched in 2021, has facilitated over 250 skilled wood craftsmen to receive NBQ Level 3 certification. Hema's consumer brands have won 5 awards across 3 of its key brands at the Slim Brand Excellence Awards 2023 held recently. Accordingly, Hema's won awards in the categories of Overall Product Brand of the Year, Best New Entrant Brand, and the CSR Brand of the Year. Meanwhile, amidst the backdrop of relatively stable operation conditions in the domestic economy, the Hemas Holdings plc group's revenue witnessed a marginal increase of 4.9% in the December 2023 quarter, standing at 31.2 billion rupees. The firm said during the quarter the operating profit and earnings showed a growth of 19.6% and 126.6%, reaching 3.9 billion rupees and 2.2 billion rupees respectively.
And that wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9 on AdaDerana 24.
Thank you very much for joining us. Make sure that you go to adaderana.lk for the latest. I'm Mahesh Johnny.
And I'm Indivadi Amuatta. Good night.